Seven Knights Revolution Hero Successor is about a group of people who are giving powers and spoken to from older heroes that sort of like possess their body and empower them so that they can fight against evil creatures called Physis, I think. I'm not fully sure how to say it. Anyway, main character shows up. Turns out that he is also possessed by one of these ancient heroes. Now, the show explains where these heroes come from, and I don't remember. Some sort of reincarnation thing, I think, and then they mention an energy source. It does come up, but I don't remember all the details for it. It's also worth noting that the show is actually self-contained, and it does tell the entire story start to stop, at least as best as I can tell. So the main character ends up getting brought into this sort of like magic school where they fight monsters and is brought into the student council because the student council is all comprised of the people who are the members of the Seven Knights who are possessed by the ancient heroes. Now, there is one thing that I think the show really doesn't explain well enough, which is that at one point the main character wants to learn about the hero that he is possessed by. So he goes to the librarian and is like, I want to learn about my hero because his hero doesn't talk to him, unlike everyone else's heroes. That's not the weird part. The part that's like bordering on a plot hole is we later find out that the main character is actually lying the entire time, and he does know what's going on in the main plot. And so it seems like if he knew the entire time, it didn't make sense for him to talk to the librarian unless he wanted to know the information about like his specific hero. But it seems like he should have already had that information, considering he knew his own origin and how he got his powers in the first place, even though he just pretends he doesn't. So that might be a little bit of a plot hole. One thing I will give this show credit for is it does something really good with the relationships for the characters and their sort of like romantic relationships, because one of the Seven Knights of the student council has this sort of like crush on the librarian, and this actually ends up becoming an important detail about his character going into the final plot. And then there's another one, which is like this elf guy that's in the student council that is emotionally isolated, but there's this girl that's established early on to have a crush on him, and so they start to have a bit of a relationship with each other, which later ends up driving his character arc even further down. All of this is framed between a romantic relationship slowly developing between the main character and the girl who saves him at the beginning, who's also like the leader of the Seven Knights. And I will say that the show does sort of LGBT representation really well, because probably the best character in this entire show is actually a vampire girl who tries to hide that she's a vampire because people don't like vampires because of the whole blood-sucking sort of thing. And she is probably bisexual, I like to assume, because she did ask the main character out at one point, but she's shown to have a relationship with this other girl on the student council who donates her blood so that the vampire girl can stay fed, and she clearly has a relationship with them that actually ends up being probably the cutest and sweetest relationship in the entire show. Vampire bisexual girl is like the best character in the entire show, which is actually probably one of the issues that I have with the show, which I think we're going to talk about in a second, but not before we talk about some of the issues I have with the plot, which is that essentially we have the initial episode which establishes our premise. It does it clean enough, no issues with that. And then the first several episodes are about establishing about 50% of the student council and how that connects to the main plot. It does a serviceable enough job, but then around episode 6, episode 7, they go into a volcano, and then we just enter Endgame, and then it's just like fight scenes, plot points, this happens, this happens, this happens. It feels sort of rushed, but this isn't one of those examples where I think having more content would have saved it, because the problem is that, honestly, the story itself is very generic, and so it's not like more elaboration would have helped anything. And regardless of the fact that I do have an appreciation for bisexual vampire girl, it is also worth noting that the only reason I know her name is because I'm staring at it right now. Like, I do not remember much beyond her character The characters are very flat. The show does a fantastic job of developing their relationships and using that and integrating that into the plot line, but the actual plot and the story and the characters are actually kind of weak. So Seven Knights has a lot of respectable elements to it, but it's just a little too bland, a little too milquetoast, and a little too generic to truly make a worthwhile show. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic, your Envoy of Hope. Bye-bye.